An October garden. It seems to be drifting into a peaceful slumber, lulled by the rustling of golden leaves. But don't be fooled. Right now, your garden is undergoing a crucial test that will determine whether you'll be greeted by lush spring blossoms or stark, lifeless branches. Today, we're going to discuss 15 critical October gardening mistakes that will cost you dearly come spring. And trust me, some of these are so subtle, so counterintuitive, that even seasoned gardeners fall prey to them. It's easy to assume that October is a time to kick back and relax. The harvest is in, most of the leaves have dropped, so you can just unwind. But that's precisely where the danger hides. October isn't the grand finale of the season. It's the critical pre-season preparation for the next. Everything you do, or fail to do, right now lays the foundation for your garden's health, strength and beauty for the entire year to come. It's the pivotal month that separates a dream garden from spring disappointment. All right, let's talk about mistake number 1, the one your garden will absolutely not thank you for. You've probably heard the advice. Don't bother raking up fallen leaves. It's natural mulch and fertilizer. Sounds perfectly logical, doesn't it? But what if I told you that following this seemingly benign advice could actually cost you the health of your entire garden? And that's no exaggeration. Let's be honest. Throughout the summer, the leaves of your apple trees, pear trees, cherry trees, roses and even your phlox accumulate a massive amount of disease pathogens. Things like apple scab, powdery mildew, cherry leaf spot, and anthracnose. These intimidating names all refer to various fungi and bacteria. And unfortunately, they don't just die off with the first frost. For these pathogens, fallen leaves aren't a graveyard. They're a cosy winter sanctuary. They happily overwinter in that leaf litter, just waiting for spring. Then, with the first warm days and rains, their spores will spread throughout your entire garden, ready to infect all those fresh, tender new leaves. You'll be spending money on fungicides and countless hours on treatments, all while the source of your spring epidemic lies literally right under your feet. Of course, we're primarily talking about diseased leaves here. But honestly, who among us can genuinely claim their garden was perfectly healthy all season long? Exactly. So, if you want to avoid an uphill battle against diseases next spring, all leaf litter from beneath your fruit trees, and any diseased ornamental plants absolutely needs to be ruthlessly cleared away. So do you clear your leaves? Or do you see it as unnecessary extra work? Let me know in the comments below. I'm really curious to hear your thoughts. But wait a minute, don't be too quick to grab your rake and clear your garden down to the bare soil. Just when I've warned you about diseased leaves, I'm about to tell you something that seems to contradict it entirely. By turning your garden into a sterile, immaculately clean expanse, you're making a different yet equally damaging mistake. This is the other extreme, one that's very easy to fall into. Imagine completely bare earth under trees and shrubs. Beautiful? Maybe. But for nature, it's a disaster. This kind of soil freezes much deeper. It's blown away by the wind and eroded by autumn rains. You deprive earthworms and beneficial microorganisms of their natural shelter and food. And they are precisely what make your soil vibrant and fertile. What's more, where will your ladybugs, ground beetles, and other beneficial insects, your first line of defense against aphids in the spring, overwinter? Exactly. They simply won't find shelter in your sterile plot. So remember this, only remove leaves where it's absolutely necessary, specifically from under fruit trees and diseased plants. However, under healthy ornamental shrubs and in perennial flower beds, a thin layer of healthy leaves acts as a free and natural winter blanket. So, which camp are you in? Those who rake every last blade of grass, or those who seek a happy medium? So the harvest is in, and your garden beds are lying bare. It might seem like your mission for the year is accomplished, but if you simply leave them exposed like that until spring, you're actually setting yourself up for a genuine soil disaster. Bare, uncovered soil in autumn is like an open wound on the body of your garden. Picture this. Cold autumn rains relentlessly pound down on that defenceless soil. They don't just water it, they actually beat upon it, destroying its delicate structure and compacting it to a rock-hard consistency. All those vital air channels where roots breathed and beneficial microorganisms thrived simply collapse. Then the frosts hit. That wet, compacted earth freezes solid, turning into an icy monolith deep below the surface. Very little beneficial life can survive those conditions. Come spring, when you return to your garden, you won't find loose, fertile soil. Instead, you'll be greeted by a cracked, hard crust. You'll have to expend a huge amount of effort just to even break ground, and dreaming of a good harvest from such dead soil? Forget about it. So remember this, your soil should never be left bare. How do you protect your garden beds from the ravages of autumn? Do you use cover crops, mulch, or perhaps you have a secret method of your own? This mistake is closely related to the previous one, and I call it the spring scramble. Many gardeners think, why bother adding compost or manure in the fall? It'll just wash away with the rain anyway. I'll do it in the spring instead, right before planting. And this is one of the biggest misconceptions that robs you of both valuable time and crucial soil fertility. Understand this simple truth. Organic matter isn't instant coffee. It needs time to brew, or rather, to break down and become available. When you apply compost in the fall, you kickstart a slow but incredibly vital process. Earthworms and microorganisms immediately get to work. Throughout the long autumn and winter months, they have ample time to decompose the organic matter, distribute it evenly through the soil layers, and transform it into plant-available nutrients. Autumn composting is like adding a sourdough starter to your dough. You're giving your soil everything it needs so that by spring, it's rich, vibrant, and full of life. Then, in spring, when time is always short, all you'll need to do is gently loosen your beds and get planting. But if you put it off until spring, that fresh organic matter simply won't have enough time to truly work its magic by the start of active plant growth. It'll largely sit there, inert, while your seedlings starve. So, which side are you on? Feeding your soil in the fall, or leaving everything until spring? All right, let's talk about that irresistible urge many gardeners feel in October. You grab your secateurs, look at an overgrown bush, and think, I'm going to make this beautiful. Hold on. That very desire to tidy things up can actually turn into a real tragedy for your plants. Drastic autumn pruning is one of the cruelest mistakes you can make. Understand this. For any plant, cutting a branch is a command. It's a command to grow. The plant immediately channels all its energy into awakening dormant buds and sending out new shoots just below the cut. In spring, this is exactly what we want. But in October, it's a disaster. These young tender shoots simply won't have enough time to mature and harden off before the frosts hit. The first cold night, and they'll blacken and die. So, what's the consequence? The plant has wasted precious energy it was storing for the entire winter, all for absolutely nothing. It will enter winter weakened, with unhealed wounds that, in the cold, become open invitations for infections. So, what kind of pruning is acceptable? Only what's essential for plant health. If you see a branch broken by the wind, go ahead and cut it. Spot one that's clearly dry or diseased. Remove it without regret. But any shaping or rejuvenation pruning? Save that for spring. Admit it. Are you one of those who loves to snip away at bushes in autumn? Or do you patiently wait for the spring thaw? Let's illustrate the previous point with an example that's sure to devastate any gardener in spring. Picture this. It's October, and you, with the best intentions, give your lilac, forsythia, or perhaps your doisia bush a thorough prune. You're proud of your work. The bush looks tidy and well kept. But come spring, it stands completely bare. Not a single bloom. Does this sound familiar? The secret is, all these beautiful spring flowering shrubs perform a little miracle. They set their flower buds for the next year. Not in the spring, but as early as midsummer on the current season's growth. Throughout late summer and fall, these buds mature and prepare for winter dormancy. So what are you doing when you grab those pruning shears in October? You are literally, branch by branch, cutting off all that future splendour. Every snip of your shears means one less magnificent lilac cluster, one less vibrant spray of golden forsythia. You are quite literally tossing next spring's entire bloom into the compost pile. Remember this golden rule: shrubs that bloom in spring and early summer should only be pruned after they finish flowering. In the fall, you should only touch them to remove dead or damaged branches. Has anyone else fallen into this trap? Made this mistake without realizing? Share your experiences, it will be helpful for everyone. The rose, truly the queen of the garden, often falls victim to common gardening mistakes, especially in October. A widespread myth, devastating thousands of roses nationwide, claims the earlier you protect them, the better they'll survive winter. This is absolutely wrong and even dangerous. Excessively early and vigorous winter preparation can cause roses to rot. Picture this: it's still a warm, sunny October. You've already pruned your rose and carefully bundled it up in layers of horticultural fleece. What's happening inside that cocoon? Temperatures soar, humidity climbs. These are ideal conditions for fungal diseases to flourish. But there's an even greater danger. Kept warm, the plant doesn't receive the crucial signal that winter is coming. It misses the chance to harden off, and its shoots fail to properly mature. So, when the real hard frost finally hits, this unprepared rose is utterly defenseless. It perishes not from the cold, but from your premature care. So, remember this: there's no need to rush with pruning and covering your roses. Wait for stable, light frosts, at least -5 degrees Celsius, 23 degrees Fahrenheit. Let the plant feel the cold and understand it's time to go dormant. A light frost won't harm roses. In fact, it only helps them harden off. So when do you start covering your roses? Do you wait for the frost, or do you follow the calendar? This mistake won't kill your garden, but it's guaranteed to rob you of your spring joy. October flies by in a flurry of activity. Harvesting, pruning, preparing, and then it hits you. Oh no, I never planted the tulips. By then, it's November. The ground is already frozen solid, and it's too late to do anything. Then spring arrives. Your neighbours' gardens burst into vibrant patches of crocuses, followed by dazzling tulips, and the air fills with the fragrance of hyacinths and daffodils. But your garden, it's still grey and drab. While other yards are celebrating a riot of colour and life, yours is just barely waking up. It's truly disappointing, believe me. Spring flowering bulbs are the first wave of beauty that washes away winter's greyness, and you can only set the stage for this wave in autumn, specifically September and October. This is precisely when bulbs have the time to establish roots, gather strength, and prepare for their winter dormancy. Planting spring bulbs in spring, with rare exceptions, simply won't yield good results. So, if you want your spring to be vibrant and full of blooms, don't put off buying and planting your bulbs. Get them in the ground now. By the way, what spring flowering bulbs have you already planted this year? Or are you planning to try something new? Share in the comments. Now let's talk about a common mistake that almost everyone makes, even very experienced gardeners. We often assume that autumn brings plenty of rain, so we stop watering our plants, thinking nature will handle everything. But this belief can actually doom your most cherished and valuable plants, especially evergreens. This phenomenon is known as autumn drought, and it's often far more insidious than its summer counterpart. October frequently brings surprisingly dry and windy conditions. With the leaves gone, we might think there's nothing left to lose moisture, but that's a misconception. Plants are still actively breathing or transpiring, and their root systems are working hard, preparing for the dormant season. If soil moisture is insufficient, roots can't store the vital reserves they need to survive winter. Evergreens, think arborvitae, junipers, spruces, and even rhododendrons, are especially susceptible. These plants will continue to lose moisture through their needles and leaves all winter long, even when temperatures drop below freezing. If you haven't given them a proper deep drink in the fall, they'll go into winter already dehydrated. Come spring, you'll be greeted by a disheartening sight: yellowed, brittle needles or leaves dropping, and the plant looking utterly scorched. This is the telltale sign of autumn drought damage. So remember this crucial tip. If October is dry, it's absolutely vital to give your plants a thorough, deep hydration watering. Soak the soil under your trees and shrubs deeply. We're talking at least 20 to 24 inches down. This isn't just a sprinkle, it's a deep, saturating drink. It's their life insurance policy for the long winter ahead. So tell us, do you remember to water your garden in the fall? Let's take a closer look at conifers, because neglecting them is a very common and expensive mistake. They stand green and vibrant, seemingly perfectly fine, but it's precisely this evergreen nature that plays a cruel trick on them. Unlike deciduous trees which shed their leaves and enter deep dormancy, conifers don't truly sleep. Their needles remain alive and active throughout the winter. Now picture this. The winter sun emerges, even if it's not particularly bright. It warms up their dark needles. The wind sways their branches. Both these factors cause the needles to evaporate precious moisture. This process is called transpiration, and it doesn't stop, even in freezing temperatures. But what's happening underground at this time? The ground is frozen solid. The roots are held captive by the frozen earth and cannot absorb a single drop of water to replenish the loss. This creates a deadly imbalance. Moisture is lost from the needles, but no new water can be drawn from the ground. The plant slowly but surely dries out from within. What we often call sunburn in spring, that telltale reddish dried out foliage, is, in fact, in 90% of cases, the result of winter desiccation. And the only way to prevent this is that essential deep autumn watering, which creates a vital water reserve in the deeper soil layers for the entire winter. Have you ever encountered this problem of thujas or junipers browning in spring? Now you know what the true cause might be. It's a common mistake, often driven by our eternal optimism, or perhaps a bit of wishful thinking. We plant a young, not yet established tree, or a tender shrub, like a big-leaf hydrangea, telling ourselves, "Oh, winters are mild these days. It'll probably be fine," only to find ourselves sadly looking at blackened, lifeless branches come spring. Understand this. Young plants, especially those you've just put in the ground this past fall or spring, are like newborns in your garden. They haven't yet developed a strong root system, nor have they had time to store up enough nutrients. Their bark is still thin and vulnerable. Any significant stress, be it a deep freeze, biting winds, or the punishing cycle of thaws and refreezes, can be fatal for them. The same goes for those tender, warmth-loving southerners. Even if they've been in your garden for a few years, an unusually harsh or snowless winter can still spell their demise. Relying on luck in gardening is a thankless and costly endeavour. Come spring, you'll simply find yourself heading back to the garden centre to replace what you've lost. So, don't skimp on protection. Mulch the base of young trees with a thick layer of compost or peat. Cover tender shrubs with spunbond, burlap, or even evergreen boughs like pine or spruce branches. These simple steps take very little time, but they can save the lives of your green companions and spare you money and frustration come springtime. Do you have plants in your garden that absolutely require winter protection? How do you safeguard them? Let's talk about one of the most unexpected dangers that threaten your trees in winter, the winter sun. Yes, you heard that right. That gentle, seemingly mild sun in February or March can actually be devastating to tree bark, especially on young saplings. Picture this mechanism. During the day, bright sun shines on a dark, unprotected trunk. The dark surface heats up significantly, sometimes to well above freezing, causing the bark tissues to slightly expand. But then, at night, a severe frost hits. The warmed, often moist bark rapidly freezes and contracts. This drastic temperature contrast is too much for it, and the bark simply can't withstand it, cracking and splitting to form deep, vertical fissures. These unsightly wounds are known as sun-scald or frost cracks, and they're not just a cosmetic flaw, they're open gateways for all sorts of infections, fungi, bacteria, and spores. In spring, a weakened tree will divert its energy from growth to battling these diseases. The solution to this problem is brilliant in its simplicity: whitewashing tree trunks in the fall. The white colour reflects the sun's rays, preventing the bark from overheating. No overheating means no drastic temperature fluctuations. Plus, whitewash often contains copper sulfate, which further disinfects the bark. So do you whitewash your trees in the fall? Or do you consider it an outdated practice? Now let's turn our attention to the lawn. You might think your grass is the least demanding part of your garden, but even here a common mistake can completely ruin your spring mood. That mistake is letting your lawn go into winter long and untrimmed under the snow. Many people reason, the longer the grass, the warmer it will be for winter. But this is fundamentally wrong. Long, overgrown grass, weighed down by snow, will flatten, compact, and form a dense, matted layer. And what happens underneath that dense layer? It creates a warm, moist, airless environment, the perfect breeding ground for fungal diseases. The most common culprit is snow mould. In spring, as the snow melts, you'll find unsightly grey or pinkish patches of slimy matted grass on your once emerald lawn. That's the work of the fungus. Dealing with these damaged patches requires a lot of effort. Raking, aerating, and treating with fungicides, all of which could have been easily avoided. The golden rule for fall lawn care is to give your lawn its final cut about 2 weeks before the first hard frost. The ideal height should be around 2 to 3 inches or 5 to 7 centimetres. This length is short enough to prevent matting under the snow, but long enough to keep the grass healthy and resilient. So, have you given your lawn its final trim for the season yet? Continuing our discussion about lawn care, we simply can't overlook another critically important procedure that many homeowners tend to ignore: autumn fertilisation. And we're not talking about simply throwing any old fertiliser you found lying around in the shed onto your lawn. Spring and autumn fertilising are two completely different stories. In spring and summer, we use fertilisers with a high nitrogen content. Nitrogen is a growth stimulant. It encourages grass to grow rapidly upwards and gives it that lush, green colour. However, if you apply such a fertiliser in October, you'll trigger a burst of growth in young, tender grass right before the first frosts hit. It won't have time to strengthen and will inevitably die off during winter. This would simply be a wasted effort for your lawn. In autumn, however, your lawn needs entirely different elements: phosphorus and potassium. Potassium boosts the grass's cold tolerance, helps it resist diseases and better withstand stress. Phosphorus, on the other hand, stimulates root system development, and strong, healthy roots are the key to ensuring your lawn wakes up quickly, uniformly, and starts growing vigorously in the spring. That's why you should look for special fertilisers labelled autumn or winterizer in stores. Their formula is specifically balanced for the plant's needs as winter approaches: low nitrogen, high phosphorus, and potassium. This type of feeding is like a vitamin complex for humans preparing for a long winter. Do you fertilise your lawn in the fall? Or do you only bother with a spring application? Now let's turn our attention from the lawn to the flower beds. Amidst the hustle and bustle of October, we often look at our perennials and think, wow, they've really grown into beautiful lush clumps. So we leave them as they are for winter. Come spring, however, we're often surprised to see that the centre of the plant, a hosta or astilbe, for instance, looks a bit bare, and the blooms aren't as prolific as they once were. The truth is, most perennials tend to age over time. Their root system expands, and the oldest, central part of the rhizome gradually dies off. Meanwhile, new, vigorous shoots emerge around the edges. This eventually causes the plant to split or die out in the middle, losing its visual appeal and vitality. October is actually the perfect time to rejuvenate these overgrown plants. The soil is still warm enough, allowing newly divided sections plenty of time to establish themselves before the first hard frosts hit. Carefully dig up the entire clump, then using a sharp knife or spade, divide it into several sections, ensuring each piece has a healthy portion of the root system and several buds. Discard the old woody central part and then replant the young, vigorous divisions in new spots. This way, you're not only rejuvenating an aging plant, but also getting free new planting material. In spring, when your gardening to-do list is already overflowing, you simply won't have the time or energy for this task. But right now, it's the perfect window of opportunity. Ignoring fallen or forgotten fruit after harvest is an open invitation for pests and diseases to thrive in your garden next season. We pick our crops, celebrate the bounty, but what's left hanging on branches or lying on the ground often gets overlooked. A few shriveled, blackened apples dangling there, a pile of rotting plums under the tree. What's the big deal, right? The difference, however, is monumental. Every single forgotten, mummified fruit clinging to a branch is a hotbed for brown rot, also known as moniliosis. The fungus that caused the disease doesn't just vanish. It happily overwinters right inside that fruit, making it a cosy little home. Then, in spring, with the first warmth, its spores will readily spread throughout your entire garden, infecting young blossoms and newly forming fruit. And what about windfall those fallen fruits? They're a 5-star dining experience and a luxury winter resort for coddling moths and countless other pests. Their larvae and pupae quietly overwinter in the soil, right beneath these decaying apples, ready to launch a full-scale assault on your next harvest as soon as spring arrives. So, remember this crucial step. After you've gathered your main crop, conduct a thorough garden cleanup. Remove every last shriveled or dried up fruit from the branches. Collect all fallen fruit from the ground. And whatever you do, absolutely do not throw them into your compost bin. Diseased fruits must either be burned or buried deep, far away from your property. Be honest, do you always clear away all leftover harvest from your garden? Or do you sometimes get a little lazy? Imagine a hidden world of pests. In summer, they feast on your plants. In autumn, they search for a place to weather the cold. And you, unknowingly, provide them with thousands of 5-star accommodations. These are cracks in the bark, fallen leaves, and the top layer of soil. That's precisely where aphid eggs, sawfly pupae, mites, and the spores of most fungal diseases overwinter. Ignoring a late-season dormant spray treatment for your garden is like leaving your front door wide open for burglars. You're granting this entire army of enemies a free pass to spend the winter. Then, in spring, as your plant buds awaken, so too will they. But these pests will be hungry, aggressive, and ready to multiply. You'll be forced to wage a constant battle against them all season, relying on chemical treatments again and again. But there's an alternative. In late autumn, once leaves have completely dropped and sap flow has ceased, but while temperatures are still above freezing, you can perform what's called a dormant season treatment. Your garden is sprayed with highly concentrated solutions, such as urea or iron sulfate. These solutions effectively eliminate overwintering pests and disease spores from tree bark and the soil around the base of your trees. It's a powerful preventative strike that significantly reduces disease pressure and pest populations as you head into the next season. Do you implement this kind of treatment? Or do you consider it unnecessary? The real mistake often happens not in the garden itself, but as we head into the shed or garage. Exhausted after a long day, we're all too prone to simply tossing our tools aside. Pruners still sticky with plant sap, a shovel caked with mud, a hoe covered in weed remnants. Oh well, Katai, we think. I'll deal with them in the spring. And when spring finally arrives, we invariably live to regret it. Firstly, it's simply impractical. Over the winter months, that wet soil caked on your shovel will harden into concrete, requiring a hammer to chip it off. Plant sap on the blades of your pruners, and saw will inevitably cause corrosion, leaving your once-sharp tools covered in rust by spring. You'll then face the tedious task of cleaning and sharpening them, if they can even be salvaged at all. But there's an even more insidious danger. Those remnants of soil and plant matter can harbour weed seeds, disease spores, and even pest eggs. Come spring, by simply picking up a dirty tool, you could be unknowingly spreading all these contaminants throughout your clean, awakening garden. You'll be transferring infections from one plant to another, completely oblivious to the damage you're causing. So, cultivate this simple yet crucial habit. After each use, always clean your tools thoroughly, removing all soil and plant debris. Wipe the blades with a dry cloth, or even better, one dampened with rubbing alcohol or any antiseptic. Finally, lubricate all metal parts with a thin coat of machine oil. This entire process takes just 5 minutes, but it will save you a tremendous amount of time, money, and headaches in the season ahead. Here's a common mistake that can be quite costly. When autumn arrives, we dutifully bring our outdoor plants in from the patio or terrace. But what do many of us often leave behind? The empty pots, left to endure the winter weather. This is especially true for those beautiful, often expensive ceramic, terracotta, or unglazed clay planters. You might think, they're so sturdy, what could possibly happen? But we often overlook the true culprit, water, and the unforgiving laws of physics. During the fall, any residual soil in the pot will absorb moisture from the rain, and even if a pot appears empty, water will inevitably find its way inside. Now, what happens when water freezes? That's right, it expands, and with tremendous, unstoppable force. Even the toughest ceramic or terracotta can't withstand this. The freezing water will relentlessly push against the pot's walls from the inside, until one frosty night, you hear that distinctive, heartbreaking crack. Come spring, when the snow finally melts, all you'll find where your beloved planter once stood is a sad pile of shattered shards. It's truly disheartening, especially if that pot was expensive or held deep sentimental value. So the rule is simple. Any porous pots that can absorb moisture, like ceramic, terracotta, or unglazed clay, must be completely emptied of soil, thoroughly dried, and then stored in a frost-free environment for the winter. This could be a shed, a basement, or your garage. While plastic pots aren't as susceptible to frost damage, it's still wise to bring them indoors as well. Extreme cold can make the plastic brittle and prone to cracking, significantly shortening their lifespan. And finally, the last mistake isn't about a specific action. It's all in our heads. It's the thought. That's it. The season's over. Time to rest until spring. In late October, once the last harvest is in and the leaves are raked, it's incredibly tempting to just shut the garden gate and forget about it until April. But this mental checking out is exactly where many of us go wrong. Because your garden doesn't simply go dormant overnight, its processes are still underway. There's still time to give your plants a deep watering. It's not too late to whitewash your trees. You can still tidy up your tools and put away your pots. October and even early November isn't the finish line. It's a crucial transitional period. When you mentally close the season too early, you simply miss out on valuable time. You overlook issues that could easily be resolved now, but which will become a real headache come spring. You also miss out on ideal weather for tasks that you'll be rushing through in the mud come springtime. So, don't rush to say goodbye to your garden just yet. Walk through it, observe and plan. Think of October not as the end of the season, but as the beginning of preparations for a new, even more successful and beautiful gardening year. So, when does the gardening season psychologically end for you? Is it with the first snow, or do you still find things to do in the garden even in winter? But what's the most devastating mistake of all? The biggest shock in spring isn't that something failed to grow. It's realizing that you, with your own hands, created the perfect conditions for that failure back in autumn. Imagine this scenario. You left scab-infected leaves under your apple tree, didn't give your nearby arborvitae a deep watering, and left your garden beds bare. What happens next? Disease spores will happily overwinter in those leaves. The arborvitae will dry out from the winter sun because its roots lack sufficient moisture, and the bare soil will freeze solid, killing off all beneficial microorganisms. Come spring, you won't just face 3 separate issues, you'll have a cascade of failures, a true ecosystem of defeat you painstakingly crafted in October. Quite a twist, isn't it? One mistake inevitably leads to another. Ultimately, your October gardening tasks aren't just routine chores, they're your most profitable investment in next year's harvest and the overall beauty of your garden. Every diseased apple removed, every litre of water given to your evergreens, every tulip bulb planted, each is a contribution to the lush, healthy future of your outdoor space. Thank you for watching this video to the end. I hope you found it helpful. If you did, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss future episodes. What autumn gardening mistakes have you made? Or perhaps you have a secret tip for preparing your garden for winter. Share them in the comments below. I'd love to read them.